Welcome to Bemadzijig Ginonindwa. This podcast is produced by the Communications Department at the Anishinaabeg Nation. We will be focusing on the issues and initiatives in Anishinaabeg Nation territory. I'm your host, Lisa Abel. In recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, I met with Okemos Donna Dabasige, Lake Huron representative on the Anishinaabeg Nation Getsajig Advisory Council. In our Anishinaabemowin language, Okemos means grandmother and Getsajig means elder. Getsajig Donna Dabasige is an Anishinaabe of the Fish Clan. She is a member of the Wikwemkong unceded territory and grew up in Kaboni. Okemos Donna is a mother of 3 children and a grandmother to 4 grandsons. She is a fluent speaker of Odawa and a member of the Rain Dance Lodge. Okemos Donna retired with 35 years of experience working in Aboriginal governance at the United Chiefs and Council of Menado-Minnesing. She then graduated in 2015 from Laurentian University with a Bachelor of Arts degree with a combined specialization in gerontology and Indigenous Studies. In addition to her position on the Anishinaabeg Nation Getsajig Advisory Council, Okemos Donna has served on committees and councils with many organizations, including the Indigenous Justice Division, Ministry of the Attorney General, the Chiefs of Ontario, the Manitoulin Anishinaabeg Research Review Committee, Ontario First Nations Technical Services Corporation, the Indigenous Research Council at Canadore College, Wikwemkong Unceded Territory, and Wikwemkong Tribal Police Services. Okemos Donna is a survivor of the Spanish Indian Residential School for Girls. She attended from grades 1 to 6. We met at the Community Center at Kitigan-Zibi First Nation this September and talked about Okemos Donna's experiences at Spanish and the effects that residential schools, government policies, and religion had on her community. We talked about her work with the Office of the Independent Special Interlocutor for Missing Children and Unmarked Graves and Burial Sites associated with Indian residential schools. Okemos Donna also shared her hopes and expectations for the September 30th National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, for her fellow survivors and for the community at large. Please be advised that listeners may be triggered by this recount of Indian residential schools. To access a 24-hour National Indian Residential School Crisis Line, dial 1-866-925-4419. Miigwech Donna Dabasige for being with us here on Bemadzijig Ginonindwa. So I understand, Donna, you are a part of the Getsajig Council with the Anishinaabeg Nation. So welcome.
Correct, for the Lake Huron region.
Miigwech. So would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Bosho Bev de Kwedang Digo, which means the sound of the little thunders that come before the big thunders. This was the spiritual name given to me by our late elder Getsit Gordba Windabens. I'm from the Anishinaabeg Nation. I'm from Wikwemkong, where I live now, and I've married into Chiging First Nation, which is where the Dabasige comes from, and the Dabasige family. But I'm now living back in Wikwemkong, and I was born and raised in Kaboni, the little community on the outskirts of Wiki. Yeah, it was a farming community, so that's basically where I grew up. Mm-hmm. Me and my 2 sisters, an older sister and a younger sister, we were raised on the Reclay farm in Kaboni. Our parents had split up because of, alcoholism and the usual kind of social ills that affected our family. So we were raised on the Reclay farm, which was quite a different lifestyle compared to the way things are now. There was at least 14 of us living in the big family farm home there, and we didn't have hydro then, and outside toilets and all the way people lived back in the day. But we had a huge farm that had lots of animals, farm animals, and we had horses, we had cows, we had pigs, chickens, all those things that you keep on a farm. And we had huge vegetable garden. That's one thing I remember. We had all kinds of stuff in there, like the carrots, the potatoes, beets and peas and everything, yellow beans and all that. And we later all canned and kept over the winter. And each of us kids would have one row to do in the summertime. And we would have to go in there and water the row and weed it and kill the potato bugs, all those kind of things. So we each had a chore to do. In the mornings, we would feed the chickens. The boys had to milk the cows, and we had all our other indoor chores for the girls to do. And so we were busy, we were busy kids. And then in the afternoons when all the chores were done, then we, had time to play and do other things. We went berry picking, like for about 2 weeks straight in July. We would pack our lunch, and the bunch of us kids would go up to the backwoods, and there's fields back there, and we would go and pick strawberries, and which was, to me, it was kind of like an idyllic sort of way to spend your summer. We used to make canoes, like those little birch bark canoes.
Okay.
And we would sell those, like the men would go out and harvest the birch bark for us. We would harvest the sweetgrass. We'd get the quills and color them, and we made, in the evenings, when there was, we didn't have TV or anything like that. Yeah. So we would, make these little canoes, and as all the kids so then we would pack those all up and send them out to the store, and that's how we made money to buy flour and sugar and those kind of things that we didn't grow on the farm, but that we needed to keep ourselves going. So it was little things that all made your life that much better. Yeah. We made our own butter, It was a wonderful life. We made maple syrup in the spring, lots of things that no one does anymore. Yeah, it was a good way. That's how we were raised. And it was always in the language. We spoke the language completely. We were completely fluent in the household. It was only when I left to go to Spanish that, they told me, you're going to go to school in Spanish. So when they ask you something, you say, what? They told me. So I was practicing that for a couple of weeks before the school bus came in. And if they tell you something, you say yes. So what? Yes, okay. So I was all set and got up that morning, all excited, and the bus was coming down. And this was in September.
And how old would you have been then?
I would have been 6. Okay. Yeah, so just turned 6 because my birthday's in April. And so I got on the bus, and they asked me something, and I said, what? And and then they said something to me, and I said yes, but they were asking me, what's your name?
Oh.
But I couldn't understand what they were saying, so I was just, what I had been practicing had been stuck in my head. So that was my first experience getting on the bus, and the way we went to Spanish. And like I said, I was a little bit excited about it because, I wasn't too... I guess because, they raised us in a good way because we were very supported. And our dad, of course, had to go and work in Michigan. At the time, he was doing logging down in Michigan, and they would all travel down there to go. Carload of our men would go and work there for right through the winter. And so he would come home periodically and come and visit us. But we, for the most part, we stayed on the farm and then left for school in Spanish. I went to residential school. I attended in Spanish. I went there from probably around 1957 to, I was there for 5 years. So I probably went home in 1961, 62. Mm-hmm.
So that's quite a few years you spent at Spanish residential school.
Yeah, we went home in the summers, of course. So when I talk about, when we address the idea of reconciliation, that living on the farm we were taught how to work, we were taught how to be independent, we were taught how to sustain ourselves, but in a teaching way. Yeah, we were told how to do the different chores, and we were taught right through the daily activities that, what our responsibilities were, what our roles were, and all those things. So it was very educational that way. Yeah, so we had a strong, good upbringing, I guess. So when we went to Spanish, it was quite different.
How was it different?
In terms of, like we didn't know any English, which was really to our detriment, because, you would get made to stand in the corner if you didn't speak English, or if you were caught speaking the language, well, then you were punished. Yeah, which was, no one had ever punished me before. I'd never been strapped or anything. And then all of a sudden they've got this big strap, and and you're speaking your language, so they give you the strap and to hold out your little hands there to the strap, to the nuns. And it was quite different that way, and became very strict, and we had to line up in rows right from the time we left the dormitory in the morning, after we did our morning, brush your teeth, comb your hair, and make your bed and all that. Then we would line up and go down to church every morning. There was a little chapel down there. We would go, and then from there we would go down for breakfast in the what they call that, the refectory. Yeah, and then go into classes. It was very regimented. Very there was no social interaction. There was always just like little soldiers. That's how we lived. Yeah. And then the only time we had a sense of freedom was when we went into the schoolyard. So that's where we got together, because there was other girls there from Wiki and from Caboni, that South Bay, and that we got to know the other girls from Chiging or Saigmak, who played with them in the schoolyard. And that's when we would speak our language with them. And, that's how we kept our language alive.
Despite the regimental routine, lack of care and affection, and being punished for speaking Anishinaabemowin, Okemos Donna remembers a few other aspects of living in Spanish.
There used to be a big church there, a big Catholic church, where many of us made our first communions and confirmations and all that stuff. And there was also an arena, the town of Spanish. Their arena was there, and the Catholic church was for the town of Spanish. But we were, we went there too on Sundays, and went to church there and for special occasions. And the arena was a huge center for recreation. We'd go skating there, and we had a really strong girls team.
Did you play?
I played, but I wasn't one of the strong ones. But when we went back to Wiki, then we became part of a girls team there. So they had this girls team that used to play all over the island, and we were number one. So those skills that were developed there, were nurtured. Those talents were all nurtured at the Spanish arena. It was quite exciting, because we used to go there also to watch the senior men's games, and so hockey was in our blood back then. Yeah. So long ago. Like on Saturdays, the nuns would pack a lunch for us, and away we'd go to walk around in town. There used to be a bowling alley up the road, and just a little further from there used to be a sand pit. That's where we used to go sliding.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of dangerous, but we used to go sliding over there. There used to be further down on a different road. There used to be like a pine tree kind of little forest there, and we used to go and play around there. There was a lot to do, and in the back of towards the river, there was a rock, same like mountains, and we'd go and play up there, spend the whole afternoon up there. And again, that's where we would be speaking our language and connecting with our peers. When I left the school in around 1961, I think it was, and went back to Wiki, and I got enrolled in the school there and started grade 7. Yeah, so that was basically my early years. So, I guess now I want to switch up to today, when, like, I took some friends of mine, I went to show them where I lived, where I grew up, and then I was just thinking, looking at it from their eyes, this was, like an abandoned farm. the barn was falling in on itself, and everything was just gray and just no life to it as you drove by the farm. And there's nothing growing, no vegetables, no gardens, there was no animals, no nothing left. So that was quite the switch. And to me, that's, how do we get back to the way this was a thriving, beautiful farm that we never went to a store. I think we had everything that we needed right there. So, we were very self-sustaining, and now when I think about it, no one does that anymore. And that's what I'd like to see go back to, how we used to be able to become self-sufficient and just by doing extra things that people might think of it as work, heavy work, but it was worth it.
While Okemos Donna's childhood memories were about the security and self-sufficiency of her family's life on the farm in Kiboni, she became aware that First Nation citizens were under a lot of control imposed by the Indian Act, religious organizations, and other government policies, and that these were detrimental to the community. Do you have a sense of why or how the community moved away from these kind of self-sustaining practices?
Well, I always think back, and I hate to do this, but when you think back to, like I said, in 1961 was when I returned from residential school, but it was just at that time, in that period, like when we were taken, and before that, the kids were always, at home on the farm and helping with everything. But once the kids all left to go to school, at the residential school, then there was nothing left for the parents to work. There was nobody to do the gardens. There was nobody to do all those chores, and so the parents were left there by themselves to try and carry on. And then also the introduction of the 1965 Welfare Agreement.
Well, what is that?
1965 Welfare Agreement. Then welfare kicks in. They used to call it relief, but that's when that kicked in. And so people weren't working anymore because they had money coming in. To me, that was a major break in how we lived our lives.
So it was something that was probably meant to help people, but in a way it took away the need to do all of this work themselves for self-sustaining.
Yeah, for your families who are now gone. Yeah. Well, then also introduced at that time too the drinking, and then I guess I can't remember exactly when that happened, but there used to be a gate that prevented you from leaving the community. And I think it might have been around early 1950s that gate was taken down. It was over about the boundary line there, going into Mantwanning, and you used to have a letter to go through that gate.
Like the pass system?
Yeah, the pass system.
And it was that, I hear like it was an Indian agent or someone who had to approve.
Yeah.
Oh, so there was still something like that.
Yeah. Plus, the Indian agent lived in Mantwanning. There was a big house there, Indian agent house, they called it. That's where the Indian hospital was. That's where the Indian agency was, the RCMP building. It was all a little place there in Mantwanning that controlled our lives. Yeah. By this time, the Jesuits were full steam in Wiki. They were, 100%. We had a church in Kiboni, we had a church in Bazwa, a church in South Bay, and then the main church in Wiki. So we just saturated with Roman Catholic doctrine there. So, we were. Again, that leads to other things that really affected our community, which is the Jesuits, the priests, the pedophile priests that were sent to, in work in our community that really, really did damage to a lot of our young men and women. Yeah, we had the suicide epidemic there in that would have been, I think, the mid-70s. Yeah.
So it sounds like a lot of things that the community has had to heal
yes.
from. So Do you have a sense of how did this healing work start to take place? Because I guess I imagine there were people who started to come back to reclaiming ceremony or anything, but can you kind of share how you saw that process unfold?
Well, it was only, I think, probably in the mid to late 90s that I started going to ceremonies myself, that I got introduced to. I had no idea that these things were going on in our community or around surrounding. So we started going to the rain dance ceremony, which was being held there in Caboni in different areas, but mostly run by the Caboni family, Jerry Caboni and his family, Linda, his wife Linda, and their boys, Jesse, Adam, and and so, we started attending those, and then my husband became very much, he was one of the dancers for the rain dance that took place every year. And then now that's grown back quite a bit. You have the Medewan family, you have the Sundance family there. Now, they didn't do it this year, but the previous years they were doing it out at Wickham Hosting there, and that's become a very, very strong, coming back slowly, but it's over the years, I guess more recent years, it's become bigger and bigger every year. We have a lot of people that come from all over to attend the ceremonies in Wiki.
Okemos Donna has been involved with the Anishinaabeg Nation for many years. She is the Lake Huron representative for the Getsajig Council and the Kwewuk Council. Okemos Donna is the lead elder and survivor, providing guidance and direction for the Anishinaabeg Nation's reconciliation initiatives. She is an active member in the Anishinaabeg Nation Caring Community Group, made of lead communities and technicians doing the searches at previous residential school sites. She also does advocacy work on the provincial and national levels, including with the Office of the Independent Special Interlocutor for Missing Children and Unmarked Graves and Burial Sites associated with Indian residential schools. So tell me about how you became involved. How did you become involved with the Anishinaabeg Nation?
Well, I first started as the Quail Council representative for Lake Huron region. So I was on there right from when the councils first started. That would have been, 25 years ago, maybe longer. And I was the Lake Huron representative in those days. So we used to meet on different topics, and then it kind of evolved into the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls when that became a big issue, and was one of the major things that we dealt with as the Quail Council. And then now, more recently, the Indian Residential School work that's being done by Kelsey Anger and her team at the Anishinaabeg Nation.
Can you share about your work you've been doing with the Anishinaabeg Nation? I guess it might have even started while you're in the Kwewuk Council and in the Getsajig Council. Can you share about the work you've been doing about Indian residential schools?
I guess it kind of started from my position on the Getsajig Council, so that I was invited, I guess, to apply to this position on the Elders Council with the Indigenous Justice Division, the Ministry of the Attorney General. It was being run by Kim Murray at the time, and part of the Ipperwash inquiry, that's where it evolved from that. So one of their recommendations had been to have an Elders Advisory Council made up of elders from all around the province. I was invited to apply to that, so I did, and I was one of the ones selected to sit on that Elders Council. So there was 13 of us from across Ontario, and we addressed a lot of issues in regards to Indigenous justice, which was very interesting, but it kind of evolved from there, where Kim Murray was then appointed to become the special interlocutor for the Indian Residential School. So she began her work, and then she invited myself and one elder from Cross Hill, Manitoba, and there was another elder from Chisasibi, Quebec. So the three of us, we formed the Survivors Advisory Circle for Kim Murray's work. So we met with her once a month, usually by Zoom, to review work done to date and give direction on what kind of things that we would recommend that be included. So that was what we've been doing for the last. And then we, as part of our work there, we also attended all the National Indian Residential School gatherings that took place over the past 2 years. There was one in Vancouver, there was one in Edmonton, Winnipeg, and in Toronto, Montreal, and Iqaluit. So that gave us a real good idea of what kind of issues were being talked about across the country, and gave us some real insight, I guess, into the whole residential school system and how it affected our people across the country. So that was really, really good. So now we met with her in Winnipeg about maybe 6 weeks ago to review the final outline and what it was going to look like. And, it's going to be incredible when it comes out. I'm hoping that Anishinaabeg Nation, and Kelsey, of course, she's been privy to all the discussions, so that we really grab onto this report, because I think it's going to really change ourselves as Anishinaabe people and as residential school survivors, and those first generation, second generation, third generation now of families and people that have been affected. And it just has a ripple effect across the communities. And I think once we see how these things have created who we are now, I think that's how we're going to change for the better.
As part of your participation, in this advisory council for the special interlocutor, what are the kind of issues that you learned about across the country in the context of that?
There's so many. It's just that impacts have affected us in so many ways, and maybe we're too locked into the missing children, that aspect of it, in terms of the residential school. But there's kids that were sent from the residential school into these sanatoriums, TB hospitals, because TB, once one person entered a setting like a residential school, you're in a closed setting.
Yeah.
It was easy to spread. And then these children that were sent to these sanatoriums, usually down in Toronto, then the families weren't told that their child was sent to Toronto, to a different hospital, and a lot of times they passed away there. So then they were buried right there, and their parents were never informed where their children were. So those are part of the missing children. And it's like we're working now with this group down in Toronto that through Kelsey's program there, reconciliation program, and that's how we have now had lists of people that are buried down in that cemetery on Lakeshore. So there's when you start to look at them, the names start to sound familiar, and they're from your communities.
And their families, some of their families didn't even know what happened to them.
Yeah, and this was long ago, like early 1900s, So how do we trace those families? It's a big task. And so there was, and I'm not just talking about just TB, but there was also, if you go to Spanish, there's a monument there, and you'll see maybe about 8 to 10 kids listed there that have passed away in this October, November of a certain year. And you wonder, what the heck happened here, So a lot of times it was like a big flu. A flu went through the residential schools that took the lives of many of our young children. So they're buried there in Spanish, and a lot of times parents weren't notified, because these kids came from all over Ontario. It wasn't just the North Shore area or anything like that. They came from all over, and it was almost as if they were specifically sent to a distant place so that they wouldn't run away. It would be too far for them to find their way home. It's incredible, the stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's also, I guess, seeing this through the work that's done by the special interlocutor, to see how the impacts have now, like when I talked about being on that Justice Elders Council, seeing now that the courtrooms, the jails are filled with people who have been impacted by residential school. You see it in the Gladue reports that are done for courtrooms. You see it in just from knowing, the families of the individuals that are in the courtrooms now and filling up our jails. The ones that are in hospital, suffering from, very stress-related kind of, like diabetes. Diabetes is very rampant in our communities, and only because it's so stress related, and we carry all that within, and don't. Mm-hmm. And the racism, the racism has been huge too, eh? And again, see it in the hospitals, the people that have been affected by. We haven't healed, and I think that's one of the things that as I guess as part of reconciliation we need to have is a huge healing gathering that would address all these things, bringing speakers from that are experts in their fields and come and speak to us and about how, show us and explain to us, and how these things affected our lives today and how we can prevent it from continuing with the next generations. It has to stop.
Yeah,
I think there's still a lot of people that haven't told their story though. And I guess, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know what it would have been like if you had been living at home with your family, as an intact system. We don't know what that was like. So we don't know what we missed, which is very sad. Yeah.
Yeah, that is sad.
Mm-hmm.
That is sad. Do you take part in any other activities with former students who attended the residential school?
No. I remember when they first found missing children in Kamloops, that residential school there. And I think they had marked September 30th as my family and I, my two girls, and we drove to Spanish and we took a feast with us and did our own little ceremony there. Yeah, so, that was just, again, a personal thing. There was no one had arranged for any, bringing together survivors and having a feast or a ceremony. I think that's what's required. And I think we need to reclaim that spot. There was a boys' school there and a girls' school across the street, and I think we need to reclaim it and protect those areas, because there's a lot of history there, a lot of our history, we don't know if there's any missing children buried there. There's some buried up the road there at the cemetery where they have the monument, but that's just those ones. What about the other ones that passed away there? Sometimes we hear, when you go to these conferences, you hear about these babies that were incinerated in the furnaces that they had in the basements. Did that happen there?
Okay, so you don't know if there's a search happening there yet.
Well, it hasn't happened yet, and I also think when the time comes, I really like what they've done at Mohawk School in Brantford, where they've trained the youth from Six Nations to carry out these searches, because it's not rocket science, but you do need training, to be able to do this work, to decipher what the signals are and all the other things. And I think that the area there is quite large in Spanish, and I think that that needs to be done very carefully there. And again, they tore down the boys' school. I'm sure they dug up the foundation. So there's been a lot of disturbance of the area there that maybe will prevent us from finding anything if it's there. Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to mention about this work, about residential schools?
Well, I'd like to mention about the apologies, because I did go to, I was in the House of Commons when
Is it Stephen Harper?
Stephen Harper did the apology there. And, like, to me, it was a personal journey, I guess. And it was a personal reaction on my part. So it allowed me to, take those next steps on my journey. But I don't know how it affected everyone else in general. But, you can't have an apology without some kind of reconciliation, without some kind of, restoring things to the way they were, like I talked about on the farm, restoring our lives to the way it used to be. And I guess you really can't do that now, but, like in a different sense, maybe, to restore that that type of living, self-sustained living to the people.
Well, I think it's self-determining too, right?
Yeah.
What about the apology by the Pope a few years ago?
Yeah, I also attended that. I went there. I took my son with me, and just to so that he could witness it also. But yeah, it was again, like it's something that it's an experience that it's a personal experience, I guess. He is apologizing to me as a survivor, and I guess as a member of the bigger collective, he is apologizing to us as a group, as Anishinaabe people, and so again, without any action to accompany those words, it's empty.
So it's been several years that we have this day on September 30th, this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. So what do you hope to see on that day? How is that day important?
I guess what I'm thinking of, and like I said, I sit with the Indigenous Justice Division Elders Council. So part of our work has been also to create this Bimikwe. It's a cultural sensitivity training, and it's been mandated to the public service that they have to take this. So we get people through the justice system. We get classes of maybe 25 people at a time. And one of our elders, and we were quite active there pre-COVID. We did lots, and I think we were up to 5,000 sessions, and like it was included the 60 scoop and the residential school. But I was actually, like my kind of participation in it was because of my story as a survivor, such as I just finished telling you about that. I was saying, a lot of these people that work in the public service, a lot of them have never heard about residential school. They had no idea that these kind of school systems existed in Ontario or Canada, for that matter. And just no knowledge. And they, a lot of them, once I started to tell my story about what had happened to me, and not, like my story is not as brutal, I guess, as some others, but the stories that, just hearing it, to actually see someone that went to that school and to hear their story to them was, like it was just very life-changing for them. A lot of them spoke about how they would go home in the evenings, and after they had heard the sessions, and be able to go home and tell their families, their children about, this is what happened to. Now they have a knowledge, so that was non-existent before. So I'm so glad we're able to do that, and to let people know that this has happened. So I also think people that work in hospitals, people that work in our boards of education across the country should also hear that kind of take that kind of training.
So September 30th is definitely an opportunity for education.
to bring it all together, like, and for them to actually use, oh, September, yeah, I know what this is all about, for it to be meaningful to them also, because they had heard the stories and gotten the training and know what it's about now. Because I think a lot of people don't know what it's about. We do, but on the outside, I don't think people understand what September 30th means to us.
So there's still a lot of work to be done in education.
Yes.
Yeah. But then I guess you're talking about bringing it to that next level of understanding.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that's going to impact how, public servants or people working in the justice system or in the health system, that knowledge you're hoping will impact how they're doing their work.
Yes, for sure. And so that they'll understand when a person is in front of them in the courtroom that, they carry a story and there's a reason why they're there. They're not there because they're bad people. They're there because they've been affected by all these things in their history.
Well, miigwech, Donna, miigwech for sharing today.
Miigwech for giving me this opportunity.
Miigwech.
The more we educate people, the better it's going to be.
Miigwech. Chi-miigwech to our guest, Okemos Donna Dibassige, for so generously sharing your story with us. For more resources about Indian residential, day, and industrial schools, visit the Anishinaabeg Nation's website at anishinaabec.ca/IRS. Find a link in the podcast description. If this account of Indian residential schools causes any crisis or distress, please call the National Indian Residential School Crisis Line at 1-866-925-4419. This episode includes the tracks Brothers by Wolf Saga and Chippewa Travelers, Late Shift Paint for the Commissaries, and A Glaring Falsehood by Justin Delorme, Winding River by Bryden Gwis Kuenzi, licensed by Nagamo Publishing, and Feather Waltz by Kevin MacLeod. Chi-miigwech for listening to this episode of B'madzaje Ginonendwa. Until next time, Bama Pi.